what is the probability of a nuclear test occurring? So I believe there's about a 12% chance that Iran will conduct a nuclear test, an overt nuclear test in the next 6 months, 180 days, right? 2% likelihood in the next 30 days, 3% in the next 3 months, and 7% in the next 6 months. Uh, Now, what is the? Let's take a look at. Let's do a detailed analysis of this. So, first of all, is Iran capable of doing a nuclear test? Technical feasibility factors. So, there are factors that increase the likelihood of Iran doing this. So, Iran has enough nuclear 60% enriched uranium for multiple weapons that can be further enriched to produce multiple nuclear weapons. The IAEA has confirmed that Iran is running about 3,000 advanced centrifuges that are used for enriching uranium hexafluoride to higher and higher purity, right? And it is also known that Iran has at least one, if not more, previously secret enrichment plants, which would have parallel. So this means that Iran has parallel hardened infrastructure for continuing to enrich uranium to higher purities. So eventually they'll be able to produce uranium metal, which is 90% or more pure uranium, which is weapons grade uranium. But then there are factors that decrease the likelihood of a nuclear test, which is that the U.S. strikes have damaged Fordo and Natanz in Isfahan, so that would limit the likelihood of a test. And these strikes could have forced costly dispersion of materials and equipment, and this will require a lot of repair, and there could be months of delay to possibly test a nuclear weapon. That's the technical feasibility. Then there is obviously also strategic and diplomatic factors. What could increase the likelihood of tests is that obviously it is very well understood by everybody that if Iran has a nuclear weapon or a set of nuclear weapons, that would definitely re-establish deterrence, and even the US would think twice about maybe taking significant military action against Iran. And if Iran, let's say, does a nuclear test, then there could be a domestic effect, a unifying effect, rally around the flag, that sort of thing. And people who may have been indifferent towards the government may also come and support the government. And we know that Iran has withdrawn from IAEA cooperation, right? It has fully withdrawn from this cooperation, which eliminates all the real-time external constraints. And US strikes may have destroyed on-site cameras and so on and so forth. So these factors increase the likelihood of a test. What decreases the likelihood is that a nuclear test by Iran, it guarantees massive follow-on attacks. It guarantees massive sanctions. What also decreases the likelihood is that Russia has offered to remove Iran's enriched uranium, which provides an exit ramp to Iran that preserves Iran's prestige and it saves face without requiring a nuclear weapon. And active Gulf nation mediation from Qatar, from Oman, from Saudi Arabia also potentially could offer political alternatives to escalation. Excuse me. Now, here's some more triggers that could push the probability materially higher. If Iran is able to enrich uranium into metal, more than 90% enrichment somewhere, right? So that could be that is definitely a high probability of a test. It signifies a high probability of test. Iran has publicly withdrawn from the Iran has threatened that it will publicly withdraw from the NPT, and if it does that, and if it frames a bomb as a defensive necessity in high level speeches, that could indicate a probability of a test happening. Test site preparation, if it is observed, then that could indicate the probability of a test happening. If the ceasefire, if any ceasefire happens and then it collapses and there are more strikes on Iran and so on, or if IRGC hardliners sideline the moderates and after leadership losses and they gain more power, so that could lead to a higher probability of a nuclear test by Iran. And the factors that could keep the probability low or drive it lower is if there is a successful conclusion of a Russian brokered uranium transfer deal in which Iranian uranium is transferred to Russia. That will definitely significantly lower the probability of a nuclear test by Iran. If there's a sustained ceasefire that lessens the perception that the regime may collapse, well, that will lessen the probability. Um, if there are if there are additional precision strikes by Israel that prove that Israel can preempt any nuclear test, that would reduce the marginal value of a test and it could lower the probability. And if China and Russia warn that an overt test could endanger crucial economic ties and arms support to Iran, that could also lower the probability. Now let's once again look at some historical precedents, historical benchmarks, nuclear test benchmarks. So one is 2006 North Korea. North Korea did its first test only after North Korea enjoyed relative security, relative sanctuary from any Western attacks. Right? Iran at this point in time, right now as of today, it faces active bombardment, and there is no protective nation, no protective patron with a defense treaty that Iran has. Iran is on its own. Iran has no allies. Iran has no protectors. Iran has no patrons. And Iran is currently being actively bombarded, which is very different from the situation that North Korea was in 2006. And then we have India's nuclear test, Pokhran 2, not Pokhran 1, which was 1974, but Pokhran 2, 1998. So India had been conducting secret test preparations, maybe for years, maybe for months, whatever the time period was, we don't know. That's classified information. But India had been doing the secret preparations, and there was no threat to India, minimal threat to India. There were no threats of war against India or any such thing. India was not being bombarded the way Iran is being bombarded, and so on and so forth. So India faced a very different risk profile from what Iran faces today. And then there is Iraq, 1991 to 2003. So apparently Saddam Hussein had a clandestine nuclear program, and he wanted to have nuclear weapons. But there were intensive inspections in Iran. There was intensive allied air pressure, mainly by the US and its various allies. And eventually there was a war. Right? There were two wars, 1991 and 2003. But firstly, 1991, which destroyed Saddam Hussein's effort to develop a nuclear weapon before it could reach the position where he could have tested a nuclear weapon. So you can see that external force can suppress weaponization. So right now, Iran is in a similar position as Iraq was in 1991, even 2003. And it's possible that these historical precedents could come into play and potentially prevent Iran from going nuclear. So this is some historical context for us to understand what could happen. So the bottom line for a nuclear test is that Iran does have the technical capability. Iran can build and detonate a device within the next 6 months. But doing so would require technical capability. It would require reconstituting damaged enrichment capacity or moving to hidden parallel lines, right? It would, doing a test would require accepting near certain massive retaliation that could threaten the survival of the nation and the government. And doing a test would also require foregoing diplomatic escape hatches and off ramps, which possibly could now be on the table. Gulf mediation, Russian uranium custody plan, and so on. So given all these factors, all these potential trade-offs, I would say it is more likely that the Iranian leadership will pursue an accelerated but more covert threshold capability, keeping its breakout ambiguous, and they would not want to stage a headline grabbing nuclear test at this point in time. So even today, I would say nuclear test may most likely be low probability, about 1 in 8 possibility. And there are multiple factors that could come in the way of Iran doing that. So that is the most likely estimate